Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mountainside Podcast. Our guest for this episode is professional kayaker Ben Marr. Ben has been kayaking from a very young age. It was great having him on the podcast to give us a little bit of his history, some of his tricks and tips of the trade. In this episode, we discussed a lot of different things, including some of Ben's world travels. I thoroughly enjoyed having Ben on, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Benny Marr, welcome to the Mountainside Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm super pumped to have you on. Week after week, I love watching your posts on Instagram or on social of just the badass stuff that you're doing. And for people that are listening to this thing that don't know who you are, you're just a badass kayaker.
Well, thank you, dude. That's awesome. Thanks for saying that.
So what's up, man? How's the Northwest treating you? You guys are getting hammered with rain right now, right?
I'm from Canada. I'm in White Salmon, Washington, and the day I came down here was the day that things went pretty haywire up there in Canada. But I think most of the rain hit the northern Washington rivers, and I missed the bigger spike down here. But I haven't been here in almost 2 years because of COVID, and I typically spend a lot of time here kayaking because the river's very close to white salmon are some of my favorite in the world, but they haven't been, high water, but they've been at a really great flow. So it's been great being back down here.
That's awesome, man. That whole neck of the woods is just incredible country. I love the time that I've been able to spend up there, and I love getting back up there whenever I can, anywhere around Mount Hood. And so are you living in Washington full time now, or do you bounce back and forth quite a bit?
Yeah, I move around quite a bit. Over the past, more than 5, less than 10 years, I've been on a circuit, and on that circuit, there's usually a 2 to 3 months that I end up here in white salmon. More the better. It's completely based on the water levels. So usually February, March, I would be out here in white salmon. Then I go to Ontario and Quebec, which is closer to where I grew up in Canada. And that's my big wave, big water kayaking season, which is one of my favorites. I really love high volume whitewater rivers. And once the water runs out there, I take a little bit of, just enjoy the summer atmosphere on the Ottawa River, which is the river I've kind of grew up paddling on. And then it's back to British Columbia. And I just move around British Columbia trying to get onto my favorite rivers. There's a really cool wave at this tidal rapid on the Sunshine Coast I like to surf, and then later in the year we start to look at doing something exploratory. Typically a difficult trip where we need the water levels low to go explore anything that has deep canyons that can be committing and dangerous. So that starts to be September, October, which is around now, and then it's travel time. So I'm last year I spent 2.5 months in Zambia, and I'm going to be heading back to Zambia on Sunday, this coming Sunday.
If you're not following,
start over.
Yeah, if you're not following Ben on Instagram, it's just been at Ben Marr or Benny Marr, right?
It's Benny Marr. My name's Benny Marr, Marr, but someone has that, so it's just Benny MRR, and that's where I post on Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you got to go follow his page. Epic stuff on there. And when you're talking about surfing, you'll find, I don't know what you would call it. Is it like an eddy or something where it's just like this back pressured wave, and you can sit there in your kayak and do all kinds of different cool tricks. Like it's almost like a freestyle type.
Exactly. So there's a few different facets of whitewater kayaking, and one we do call freestyle. And freestyle kayaking can take place in small river features that we call holes, that are retentive features that you can kind of flip around these small boats in, and that has a competitive component. And what I like to do, we just call big wave freestyle. And I like to, the bigger the better. So I'll surf large standing waves, we call them. So in the ocean, the waves travel, which is super cool, and it's a different sensation and different power to it. But the standing river waves are created by the water flowing over a feature, and then you're completely right. Sometimes there's an eddy, which is still water created by an obstruction in the current. But those eddies, if they're quite big, they hold the current closer together. They hold the current in a straight line instead of the current fanning out. But they also create back pressure, and that can stand up waves. So some waves they could be in the middle of a rapid, and there might not be an eddy behind them. But a lot of waves do have a back pressure element to their shape or what the water looks like on the face of them.
Right. And you're doing all kinds of crazy stuff like flips, I don't know, what would you call a lot of these tricks that you're doing? And you just have to go see some video.
Yeah,
figure it out. But
surfing it's super fun. We have names for all the tricks. Some of them would make sense, like we have a downstream trick that we call a kick flip that looks very much like a kick flip, but then we're basically, I use a pretty specific kayak. So I have a kayak that's made out of carbon and Kevlar. So it's very light, and the hull of the boat is super rigid, which means that whatever energy I can create or harness coming down a wave and starting to bounce the boat to get into the air, there's no plastic absorbing that. It's kind of going into the trick. But the surfing is really fun. That's what I like about surfing big waves, because you move around on the face of the wave, and we can carve. It's not as dynamic as stand-up surfing for sure. But in the right boat, on the right wave, there's a lot of really fun sensations. And it's always been a big part of who I am as a kayaker, because I grew up paddling on bigger rivers with waves, and I was always looking at people surfing waves when I was young, and I just haven't lost the desire to do that. And what happens is we just are either having to look for new waves or explore different sections of river that we haven't yet to find new waves, or we just go back to the same rivers with more and more water when they have flooding events or anything like that. And
it's almost like a big storm surge coming in on the ocean or something, right?
Kind of like it's so much water, especially out in Quebec and Ontario, to make these waves, that it's seasonal. So within that season, if there's a big storm, awesome. But seasonally, we just go for the same 2 months, and we've been doing it for so long that we know which spots to go to at which water level, and a lot of the rivers have information about how much water's in the system, so we know where to go for the most part. And there's just so much snow in the winter out there, and it's so cold on a good year that it just gets locked up. So as soon as it starts to warm up, if that gets paired with a warm rainstorm, then we'll get a big boost.
That's when we get hammered here too in Colorado, but we have little streams. It's not like it's nothing like the Northwest with some of those rivers. I mean, we do have some big ones, but few and far between here. So, have you ever spent any time in Colorado at all kayaking or?
Just once. I used to. Yeah, there's like the GoPro Mountain Games. That used to be the Teva Mountain Games in Vail, and years ago I was sponsored by Teva for like 2 or 3 years, so I went out once for that. But yeah, so at those mountain games you'll see some freestyle kayaking where it's in a very small feature, and they're kind of doing some acrobatic flips with the boats. It's difficult to do, and not something I ever dedicated any time to becoming very good at. But that's freestyle kayaking. It's just I just prefer to do it on a bigger river with bigger features.
Is there any kayakers that have paddled into big waves in open ocean or like in the ocean? Have you ever seen that? Like, I know they're doing it on dirt bikes and all kinds of crazy stuff now. Like,
yeah, I love that dirt bike edit. There's a lot of whitewater kayaking blends together, like freestyle racing, creek boating, river running. But then there are different, they're almost different sports. So ocean surfing, you might be a kayaker and surf in the ocean in California or Oregon or in the Southeast U.S. or on some of the lakes, like on Lake Superior. But a lot of the people who surf in the ocean, they might not also paddle whitewater, or if they do, it's kind of closer, NorCal or SoCal. So there's a lot of kayakers that I haven't met and I'd never meet because that's their shred.
niche, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So I do have those boats. I kind of look out for pretty specific designs, in particular for one wave that's in British Columbia, because I need a really fast boat to surf it, and our whitewater boats aren't there. But there is definitely a category of ocean surfers in California. I think my guess is that would be where the biggest population are, and then in Europe and in South Africa, there's wave skis. So they're sit on top surf. They're very surfboard-esque designs, but they do sit on them and use a paddle. And some of those, there's some people in France that can get themselves way further out of the water with those big ocean waves.
So it's like a hydrofoil type thing or something, or?
No, they're not on foil. But they're sitting on a surfboard that's got quite a bit of volume on it, and so yeah, they're and same with slalom kayaking, which you see in the Olympics. There's people who are very dedicated whitewater athletes, but I might never meet them because our sports don't interact or intersect anywhere.
Awesome. So your background, I mean, how did you get into all this? Was it just where you grew up and it was like a pastime, or did you have friends or mentors or something that kind of shoved you into this whole world that you're living in now?
Both or all of those things. So I grew up in Ontario, Canada, and that part of Canada, which would be very similar, south of the border, that's where you start to have less terrain and a lot more lakes. So Ontario's got a lot of lakes. We have lots of big rivers too, but canoe tripping is very popular in Ontario. And that's what my family did in the summers. We would probably go once or twice on canoe trips. And I think the first time they took me, I was 2 years old. And that would be a trip that we would do every year as a family. And eventually there's this park there called Algonquin Park where we would go every year. But there is small little sections of river and whitewater and rapids. And my dad, it just kind of progressed through him. He started seeking out other canoeists that would like to do whitewater canoeing so he could learn. And eventually we saw kayakers, and that's how that was interesting to me. So at that point, my dad and I, we'd go out together and we'd be in the same canoe. And then once I saw kayaking and I was able to try one, then my parents were able to buy this kayak. It's called a Perception Dancer. So nowadays, if you get your kid into kayaking, you can get a boat that's made for their size, where I would have been 9 years old and pretty tiny and paddling the exact same boat that the best kayaker in the world would be paddling, and they'd be 6 feet. Or even
Right.
they didn't have much sizes. So the best male and the best female, they'd probably be in the same design. So that's what I started in, and my dad started paddling a solo canoe. And we just eventually made it to the Ottawa River. We started on a tributary to the Ottawa called the Madawaska. And the Ottawa just became, after that, the weekend destination. And then they left me there. The summer I turned 14, I got to just be left up there, and eventually got a job there probably when I was 16 cutting grass. I don't know.
That's sick.
And it just, that river was definitely my shred arena, and still is.
So basically you started when you were 9 years old in your first kayak. Did I understand?
I think
that
so.
correctly?
I think I sat in a kayak around that age, or maybe that's the age I was when my parents were able to pick one up for us. And yeah, some people start a lot later, some people start earlier. But I've been interacting with whitewater for a little bit longer than that. and it wasn't a huge amount of days per year like it is now, of course, but it certainly feels like my entire life. Yeah.
So what was that nudge for you to pursue it as a career? When did you make that jump and fully commit to that?
Well, I mean, I think probably like a lot of people who, kayaking was always a sport that I was doing, and especially interesting that no one else was doing it. Like no one else kayaked in my high school or my elementary school. No one knew what it was. No one knew what I went to go do on the weekends. And I grew up pretty rural anyway, so if I wasn't out kayaking, I was still just kind of out in the woods. We didn't grow up very close to the city that I went to school in. But I still loved skateboarding and snowboarding, and I was obsessed with watching videos. So I always knew that in sports there were professionals, and from what I could see, they just got to have a good time all the time. Like it had nothing to do with, I didn't know anything about like what sort of career they would have, or if it was a good choice or a bad choice. I just wanted to do that because I thought it was cool. And there's a really cool point to kayaking is that it's a small sport. So being on the Ottawa River, I pretty quickly went from seeing these people in magazines and in videos who I wanted to be like, and I thought they were professional kayakers, so I wanted to emulate that and be like them, and into interacting with them on the river. So it's, everyone's on the same river, and it's not like going to the ski hill on a busy day. There's just never going to be that many people, so you just get to rub shoulders with pros at a young age, and no one ever really told me what to expect or what I could expect. It's all in your imagination, or you see that there's Red Bull kayakers and just kayakers in movies. I was obsessed. I didn't know what I wanted. I just wanted it really, really bad. And at some point, I did 1 year of education outside of high school, but it wasn't really. It was fun, but
so you just jumped in with both feet in the waters that a lot of these pros were riding, and I'm sure, with a small community, you get to know each other, right?
Yeah, my friends and I shared an email. I would have been 17. My friend sent an email, and one of the popular destinations at that point was Uganda. Big high volume whitewater right up our alley, big waves. So you just go to Uganda as long as you can. As long as you can ride the money and surf waves every day. So when I was 17, my friend shot me a message about that, and I didn't go back to school. I got a job and saved up money. I bought a camera and went to Uganda so I could surf. I think we stayed there for like 2 months in the winter and tried just being I still don't have the kayaking career that I hope to have. I'm 35. I'm hopeful that from 35 to 40 I can I just try to make 14-year-old me proud. Right. Yeah.
I think we're all still chasing that dream. I'm doing the same thing. So,
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome. Was the pro community pretty accepting to you, like coming in, or was there a little bit of like arrogance there? Like,
no, it's a really beautiful community. And I think in any, if you were to take the entire population of whitewater kayakers, and there's going to be really incredible people, there's going to be grumpy people, like in any cross section of any group. But yeah, if you just start to like, I don't know, like when you start to think, okay, people who paddle 100 days a year or 200 or more, or whether they do it because whether it's part of their income or whether it's not, it's for the most part you're interacting with really great people. And in the professional kind of side of things, I don't find I'm ever interacting with someone I don't want to or would prefer not to be. But like I said, like some rivers are big and a lot of people can go down them at once and do other things. You're on the Ottawa River or on the White Nile in Uganda, you could have 10 people surfing this wave, and then people could be upstream, and maybe some people are running the section. Out here, when I go to the river today, I'm only going with one or two people, and I've always been pretty careful with who I consistently paddle with when it's in cold class 5 difficult whitewater, because it's just part of how you mitigate risk and keep yourself safe is who you paddle with. So while I don't sense any arrogance from the people in front of me, who are for the most part more recreational kayakers now, anyone from my age group, give or take a few years, and nothing in the kayakers that are kind of coming up behind us, like it's there's just so much love. I think because our sport is pretty deep in nature, there's so much love for one another because we keep each other safe, and we're so excited.
It's funny how being in beautiful places, yeah, kind of.
I think that makes a big difference. I never thought of it until someone brought it up to me, because I was visiting someone in Vancouver, which I don't go in there very much, and we were just chatting, and she was just blown away at how much time I spend in nature, which to me, I don't think of it as spending time in nature, but it's a really wonderful byproduct to this sport.
Yeah. Chasing these class 3, 4, 5 rapids, I'm sure that there's some sort of systematic thing to that. What kind of goes into, like, I guess, getting into that risk mitigation and scouting and some of that stuff? Like, obviously, if you don't have any experience in this, you just don't want to go jump into a class 5 and hope you make it out at the bottom, right? I'm sure that there's downfall you have to watch for, some sort of navigation through, rocks or even waterfalls that I've seen you go off of.
There's a lot of progression, and most of the time, from what I can see, it's pretty intuitive, because whitewater is such a dynamic environment, and when you look at a section of whitewater, whether it's one rapid or if you're considering what's going to happen over maybe a 10-kilometer run, there's so much to think about that people are either very comfortable or very uncomfortable, usually directly related to how much experience they have. However, I've definitely paddled with some people who are outliers in their response to situations that they have zero experience in and shouldn't be there. They don't have a fear response. They have a let's go response. It's
right.
It's sometimes cool to see that, but also kind of scary. But for the most part, it's your fear response keeps you safe. So people will look at a rapid and they can't see a line through it. All they can see are places they don't want to be. They can't see a single spot where they want to be in it. So then you just walk around it. What the problem is, you can't put onto a river and you just have to gather information beforehand, because
Sure.
If you're putting on a river and you've never run it before, you need to figure out from somebody who has the same skill set, or somebody who's a mentor, or somebody who's much better than you, like what am I expecting in here? And maybe that person will tell you that you're not ready or whatever. But for a lot of the people I paddle with, we've been doing it since we were kids. So when we look at whitewater, it's pretty simple to see what's going on. And it's very different when you're approaching your 20s or in your mid 20s. When I'm mid 30s now, just like what you want to do, but it's just so easy for me now. Like I don't have to I don't have like an egotistical reaction to not running anything difficult that I think I should be running.
Sure.
It just doesn't bother me like that anymore, which is wonderful. And I just like, it's hard to get in over your head. That's not true. It's really easy to get in over your head, but it's up to the individual. Some people get in over their head multiple times. Some people, it's only ever going to happen once. And I come from a background, the river I grew up learning on is so forgiving, and it's warm for most of the year, and it's just it's lovely. So we were able to grow a pretty wide and strong foundation. But yeah, often I tell people just don't paddle past the last eddy you can see, and make sure you can, if you're worried, get to shore and get out of your boat, and then the dangers of water are, put aside for the time being, and then you can evaluate what's going on and make a plan.
Right on. I think we just lost my camera, so stand by for 1 minute. We got some technical difficulties. Can you see me?
I can't. No, I can't.
Sorry,
see
dude.
No.
Stand by 1 second. I've just totally lost this camera, Jeremy. No, you're good. Yep. So we're good. Yeah, just stay where you're at. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Sorry about that, Ben. I don't know what happened. That camera just completely died on us, so maybe it's time for a new battery or something.
Yeah.
So we're still going here. We'll just jump back into it. I think we were talking about judging whitewater and risk management, and how do you manage that fear? I mean, is there, just because you've been doing it so long, is there even a fear factor anymore? Or do you ever have times where you like pull up to a bank and you're just like, you know what, today's not the day?
Yeah, it's just, I do like to run the same rivers over and over and over again. I like being in places there's a lot of good rivers around, and that way I'm just get pretty comfortable on the same sections of whitewater. So in my day-to-day, yeah, I'm just not gonna be faced with anything that's so far out of my experience that it's gonna create a big fear reaction. But when we're running rivers that I'm less familiar on, or when something goes wrong in the seat of the kayak, yeah, there's a fear response, but it has to get not ignored, but kind of itemized, and like it's going to be around and it's going to be with me, but I have other stuff I need to do, so I can kind of hold it to the side. And if you're looking at a piece of whitewater and there's a lot of fear because you think you might run it, then I just run through my process. I just look at the whitewater and establish the line and make sure I think that it's well within the realm of possibility for me to have a really clean descent and go from there. But if you're on shore, you're safe. So right. I just make sure that when I get into my boat, that I've kind of already processed the fear and used the fear as a tool to make sure that your decision making is not emotional or egotistical, and that your decision making is about being moving through that rapid because you really want to, and enjoying it every step of the way, and finishing it and being stoked that you ran something challenging.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Some of these trips that you're doing too are multiple day trips, right? Like where you'll put in one section of the river and you might be on that river for over 24 hours, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really cool part of whitewater kayaking is descending long rivers, and you put everything you need inside your kayak. So we'll have our sleeping pad, sleeping bag, all the food we need, a change of clothes, safety equipment. And some of the trips that I've done that are like right into the realm of, you call them like first descent expeditions, or just expeditions that have been done before. It could be 3 to 5 days. Sometimes we need specialized gear just to overcome the obstacles in the canyons that are waiting for us. And yeah, I think I've put enough stuff in my boat to go for 12 days before without a food drop.
That's insane.
So it just gets heavy.
Yeah.
But the boats can handle it. You kind of choose the right boat for the job and for the size of the kayaker that's making that choice.
Sure, yeah. I would imagine it would have to be an awfully big boat for me and my food. So, so when it comes to navigation on something like that, are you using any sort of GPS, or is it just like, I mean, what if there's a fork in the river? You make a wrong turn, you could end up at a different, location. What what are you guys using to navigate, and how do you kind of know where you're at that point?
A lot of that is done on the front end. So if it's in particular like a river that not just you haven't done yourself, but maybe no one's completed before or attempted, then we use a lot of, I use Google Earth a lot, and there's some other maps available online that sometimes you can look around onto the different websites that are available and find either updated or more clear satellite imagery. So we get an idea of the character of the river that way, or maybe there's a river that's close by, or it could be, you know, over a whole mountain and be just a parallel river drainage, but maybe that one has been descended. So we could look at photos from that run or video. You want to get an idea of the character, and more importantly, the gradient. So how you know, in the US it's like the feet per mile, like how many feet of drop is this river per mile. And yeah, in Canada we just use different measurements, but if there's kind of a sweet spot depending on how much water you expect to have in the river, of what is pretty reasonable, and then what's too steep, like that could really slow you down, and maybe it would become something that's not runnable. Sure. You wouldn't do in the kayak. So then you're up against technical, possibly and most likely very difficult portages. But as far, yeah, like on trips years ago, I did have a GPS, and what I would do would be I'd either get the maps for the area I was in, or I would go on Google Earth and we knew where we would put in. So I would just put these points into my GPS so that I knew kind of the distance that we had gone, or we would know that, you know, from our put in where we're starting to our takeout where we're finishing, if it's 200 kilometers, we just have an idea of how far we've gone. And you could also put points of interest
Sure.
in that you'd scouted before, but for the most part,
there's no signs or road maps.
Are,
you might cross a bridge, but that might be your only
and you kind of know where all those
right?
things are in advance, and it really depends on the character. But there, like somewhere like Uganda, when people were exploring that, then totally there's channels in the river. So you'd stick in the big channel, and then someone would go off into a smaller channel, and those channels come back together. But it's just part of figuring out a bigger river system, and really cool. That was a really beautiful part about the White Nile, at least the section where it was quite popular to go to. Now you can still go there, and there's great white water, but a lot of it is flooded out just from some big dam projects that went through over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
It's a bummer. I haven't been back in a while, but there's still people living there, running trips there, kayaking there, surfing there. It's just there's a fraction of
what it used to.
There used to be a lot more. It's still very, very worthwhile.
So would you say that was in the last like 10 to 15 years, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I've been there for different times since I was 19 to probably like 3 or 4 years ago was the last time I was there, and each year there was the first time the river there was no dams. I got to see everything on it, and it was awesome. In that little, it's a long river, but the section where the whitewater kayaking and the rafting was quite popular, I got to see it all. Then over the next few trips, it was always something was changing because of the hydro projects that were going on.
And are they
there.
doing that for power or mining, or is it some sort of industry, or is it?
Yeah, like power, upstream and downstream. There's always big cities that need power. Like in Zambia, where I'm going next week, that river is also, and kind of always has been. There's been a hopeful dam project there kind of forever, but right now, potentially there will be a big dam put in place by 2028, and that's they need a lot of power to to send up to the copper mines, because I think copper is a really big export, or the biggest export for Zambia.
I know the
So,
cobalt
there's 3
mines
power.
too are a big deal. I don't know if that's in or around those rivers, but I know that that's a huge thing right now with all the battery, like electric
Yep.
vehicles and iPhones and all this stuff. And there's a whole thing going on right now, where it's kind of like, I guess it was in the 80s or 90s, the blood diamond, type thing. And
Yep.
it's kind of a similar deal. So it's kind of unfortunate that those industries sometimes, or our demand has an effect on the environment. It's crazy. Everybody
Yeah.
wants the latest iPhone, but they don't really realize what goes into it sometimes, I think. So I hope
Yeah,
that we
it's
can
hard.
get more sustainable or figure out different things for that in the future.
It's really tough to have a accurate and holistic view of like the cause and effect and of everything. Like I feel pretty lost in that topic.
And it's hard to know as a consumer because there's nobody there telling you what really goes into making something, so you don't really think about it.
Yeah, that
So
would be really nice to
got
have
to do
little
your homework.
brochures attached to everything. Yeah.
Yeah, something. That'd be nice. Uh, Man, being in Africa, doing some of these paddle trips, it's got to be epic to be outside of your home, Northern America, that sort of thing, and seeing some different wildlife and stuff. Do you ever run into any wildlife problems with any big animals in Africa? I know isn't there saltwater crocs there, and there's all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, they have it
Hippos.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all there. Um, so it depends, and there's obviously a huge amount of like I definitely have gotten way too excited and just being completely complacent. And a lot of that you realize it when you get home. So I remember the first trip I went to Uganda. Like even the first day, I saw this massive Jameson mamba. No idea what it was, and it was more that when I got home, I thought, "Oh my gosh, I've just been around so many snakes and so many spiders, and majority of them, like probably 99% of them, I just didn't see."
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot of front end. I wouldn't call it research, but there's a lot of front end information you get from the people who have been there before, and they tell you stories, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, there's crocs on the Nile for sure, but maybe not so many in the rafting section where there's high population of people, locals using the river, up and down the river every day." It just depends, but yeah, I've had some interactions with crocodiles on a different section of the Nile. And if anyone goes kayaking or rafting there, you're gonna have interactions. It's a national park. It's super remote, and it has the highest concentration of hippos and crocodiles to anywhere on the planet. So you go up there knowing that, and it's just part of it. And it was really cool because I also saw a couple herds of elephants in the river, playing and bathing. And that was my last trip to Uganda. My first trip, we went there just to go on safari. So I got to see big cats and giraffes, and it's beautiful to see those things. I try to make sure that when I see anything, it's nice when it's natural. And if it's unnatural, because I'm on a tour, I always make sure it's in a natural setting. It's not like animals who've been captured or in captivity. But yeah, on the river, I don't know, man. It's like on the Zambezi, there's hippos and crocodiles. So upstream of Victoria Falls, you got big crocs up there, and a lot of hippos. So then the Batoka Gorge gets populated by crocodiles, very small crocodiles surviving the plunge of 300 feet down Victoria Falls. And then they come into the gorge, and they're cannibalistic. So they kind of eat fish and have altercations with each other. And if the strong survive, and they get bigger, but there's not a huge amount of them. So by the time I've been on the river for a few weeks, I try to make sure it's the first day. I talk to the fishermen, understand where there's bigger crocodiles in the river, and then just keep my eyes out for them. They're not super aggressive So I've never been chased by one, but on the Nile they're really aggressive. And then out here, just bears. Like I don't really know very much about bears, but I've had one kind of comical because nothing bad happened, interaction with a big grizz. But yeah, it's more like you just don't know how many interactions you almost had.
Right. No, I go through it. I spend a lot of time in the backcountry, whether we're, fishing or hiking. And it's typically when I'm fishing is when I've had interaction with bears and stuff like that. But I can't count how many times I've probably had interactions with mountain lions. Are probably the most scariest thing here in Colorado. And how many times they're just so stealth. I mean, I grew up here. I've spent probably hundreds of thousands of hours in nature, in the backcountry, and I can't tell you if I think I've seen 2 ever in the wild. That's how stealth they are. And I've seen their tracks and stuff, so I know that they're around. I know that they've stalked me before because I've seen their tracks fall on mine in the snow. So it's just like how it's kind of like that ghost creature that you're not really sure when it's going to pop out and get you. But
I don't really know how to prepare for it.
Yeah, it's very seldom, and I would imagine it's kind of the same feeling with those crocs, right? Because that water is not like crystal clear; it's pretty murky.
No, but I know for sure that I'll tell you this. So there's one. I can send you a video later. Like I did get chased by one on the Nile, but what you can't see in the videos that like I'm paddling to a raft and there's people that are waiting for me to arrive and pull me into the boat, and I'm gonna be safe, and I know how close I am to the raft, which I'm paddling downstream to get to, and they're, not moving downstream. So I knew I was going to get there. I could see the croc, the distances. I just had to paddle and get to the raft. But on the Zambezi one time, and I love this experience I had because I still question if I just was daydreaming or hallucinating. But there's Victoria Falls. It's this big, beautiful, wonder of the world Heritage Site, 300-foot waterfall. It's spectacular. And below are these rapids called the Minas Rapids. They're the biggest, burliest rapids on the Zambezi. They're super cool, super fun to run. I was by myself one day, so I didn't. Sometimes I run big rapids on my own, sometimes I don't, and I was just kind of torn. It's not a great idea, but I can run the rapids with somebody. I can run them by myself. Like the skill set's there. It's just like your safety situation is very different if you're alone. So I figured, at least I'll just go look at them. They're so beautiful. So I at least got myself up there to go and see them. It's the afternoon. I always tell people this is where rainbows are born. They're born under this waterfall and then they fly off to go make people happy. It's just a little joke I like to tell people. And so I went and I was looking at them and I was like, do I really want to like go and put my like mind and my body through this, and I kind of do, but it's not that big a deal. And anyways, I was just pondering whether I walk up and run them. It's pretty physical. And I looked over my shoulder, and the biggest crocodile I've ever seen on the Zambezi is just like 15 feet from me and just sitting there. And I looked back at the rapids and I was like, there's no way. Like I come up here all the time. That's such a big croc. Like the fisherman would have said something. And I looked and it was there, and I just had the craziest adrenaline reaction to it. And I was like, I need to go and run this rapid. And I got out of my boat and I started walking up, and then I put my boat down, which I never do because like the trail to go up is one way, and you're in the curtain of Victoria Falls. And I walked up onto this rock to look one more time and just make sure that I wasn't just going nuts. And I looked, I was like, there's a giant crocodile right there, biggest I've ever seen on this river. And it just decided, that's kind of what they do, man. You paddle past them all the time, and if they see you, sometimes they don't move. Then sometimes they see you and they don't want to be seen, so they go in the water and they go away. And when they're hungry, they eat. When they're not hungry, they don't. And I had the craziest feelings. Like if that thing wanted like to approach me, it could have, and then I would have been a YouTube video because the tourists would have been up there and seeing it. And it was just this great, like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe that just happened. This is insane. And I just walked up And I got into the water and I was paddling up to the first rapid, and my brain would not shut off. Like, I've run the rapids enough. I don't have to think too much to be in the right spot. And as soon as I dropped into the rapid, my head finally just went into whitewater mode. And then there's a short gap between the two rapids. And then in the gap, I was like, I can't believe I was that close to this giant crocodile. And it didn't do anything. And then I went back to whitewater mode just for a little piece of the second rapid. And then I paddled past the spot, and it wasn't there. And I tried to make sure, like, triple confirm so that I wouldn't be telling a story that was made up. But another cool thing about being on the Zam so much is I'm always looking for them because I want to see them. They're crocodiles. They're beautiful. They're so cool. And you see little ones, like, I'll paddle up to little ones. They usually run away. The big ones, it's just nice to know where they are so that you don't have your back turned to that area for too long. And anytime I see one, I make sure to look over and around, because you don't want to get fixated on a medium-sized one when there's a big one. But it's really not intense. Like, I don't know a single story of anyone being like fatally wounded by one. I've never been chased by one on the Zambezi. It's just totally part of your the experience of others, the experience that you've had. So I don't I don't worry about them. I just keep myself curious about them. In particular, on that section of river. When we go downstream further, we're a little more careful because there's bigger flat eddies and there's bigger animals. But yeah, that's the best story I have about a croc. I still think about that thing because it just seems so unlikely.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I totally could have just, now, like, on the Ottawa River, there's obviously no crocodiles, but I still, because I scan so much on the Zambezi and I've spent quite a bit of time there, when I'm on the Ottawa, there's similar rock features, and they look like rocks a lot of the time. So sometimes I like,
wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, where am I?
Or that rock looks like a croc. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's sometimes just getting that sixth sense too. Like, most of the encounters that I've had with, like, big bears and stuff like that, it's like you almost get this feeling of like something's not right before you see him or something like that, and yeah, but the actual attack numbers are few and far between to as many people as there are recreating and stuff. And I think it's just human nature to think about that.
Yeah,
is always 100%. In the back of your mind, But that's awesome. You've got to experience all that. You mentioned a few minutes ago, paddling in a group, and that group being a tight-knit group and people that you want to be around for safety factors. What are some of those safety factors that, I mean, obviously, if somebody in your group goes down, you might turn into a rescue situation that could put you in a bad position. Is that kind of the mindset behind it and picking the right people?
Yeah. It's out here and in BC, my paddling groups are pretty big. If it's high water here, my group's pretty small. There's just a handful of people who we just know each other. We've run the river together many times, and you know the people well enough that you're not going to be it's not going to be a big day for, like, there's a balance in the group of experience. And we're just, you paddle with people you're comfortable with, you have your eyes on each other, you know how well each other know the section, you can communicate so much non-verbally, and you're comfortable if you need something because they're good for you're comfortable with them socially, that if you're having a bad day or if you need to slow down or if you forgot something, you're comfortable enough to say so. I find, like, what makes me comfortable is just knowing that, like, the day that I want is available for me, like the speed at which I want to run the river, the trip, door to door from the house. I'm just confident that the trip that we're setting out to do is that's all that's going to happen. And it's kind of like a way to protect your river experience that you're going out for. And to not be, creating, like, so much happens before you get to the river. You keep yourself safe before you even get there.
Sure.
Once you get into the water, it's a whole different environment. So I just like to have, I don't like to have questions about anybody I'm with. I much prefer to already know them, to already have paddled with them quite a bit. And if I haven't, there's lots of kayakers who maybe I've never paddled with, but if they were at the put-in or if they're around and they wanted to go, I'd be like, yeah, let's go. Because I know a lot about you, just through following them or knowing about them or knowing about them from other people. So it's just, I just like paddling with people with like similar interests, similar skill set, similar experience.
Now, on the flip side of that, when you're going solo, what kind of safety measures are you taking there? What safety measures should somebody take? I mean, we typically, when we're going in the backcountry, let somebody know where you're going that's not going with you. So if you don't show back up, they know where you're at, that sort of thing. Do you guys do any sort of protocols with that, or sign in at any rivers or anything like that? Or
it depends. It depends on the desire too. Sometimes I'll paddle alone just because it's kind of the best option available, and you probably don't have to. You probably find somebody,
right,
if you try hard enough. But maybe now I'm like, oh, that's kind of intriguing. I kind of do want to go alone and have an alone experience, like have a either just to be alone and without people and not speaking, or maybe I want to take a little bit more of a challenge today and have things be a bit more critical, that I don't make mistakes. But that could be for a short run. If I go paddling alone for a big distance or something, it just fully depends on what's going on, whether I feel if I need someone to know where I am. And that's an understanding of the what I always say is like actual risks that you're taking. Some rivers are remote, some rivers aren't. You can have a lot go wrong on rivers at home. You just need to get to shore and then walk to the road. Right. So it's having a really broad understanding of what you're doing, where you're doing it. It's all experiential to me. And what I don't do things is no one's more aware than themselves of their discomfort and their comfort. So when I'm just completely comfortable, I try to make sure that I'm not being unreasonable, and then I use that comfort as a tool. And if I'm really uncomfortable, then I use that and I figure out why, and then I just move forward accordingly. I'm very rarely uncomfortable because I don't enter those situations.
Sure, you don't put yourself in it. So when it comes to like a rescue plan or something like that, is there any sort of like telltale stuff that you should have gear wise maybe that you keep with you? I mean, obviously some sort of flotation, like a life vest or something, I would imagine is key in your gear, right? But is there anything over and above, like just the normal common sense stuff?
Yeah. And then that completely gets reflected by the individual. Most of the time with myself and my friend group, we don't have every little piece that we need. But I had a conversation pretty recently with someone about this. Like my safety, my personal, like my Marr safety kit is woven into my experience. Like my ability to keep myself safe and people who are with me safe is based on like my skill set and my experience. Because we make mistakes all the time and we forget things, and I value the people who I paddle with who have not just a good safety kit with them, but they have the knowledge how to use it. Like I'm pretty useless with anything that has to do with ropes, rock climbing, and you don't need to know much to be a huge asset to a group when you're dealing with gorges or just extracting a boat, or if someone gets hurt, just extracting a person. I'm not strong there. So I've been on kayaking trips where, I'm figuring out what the trip is, and I said, hey, you guys, like this, I am going to be the weak link here. And I just need to talk to you about that because for me to feel comfortable, you need to know that, and you need to tell me that you got it. Like, you know that I'm a weak link. You're going to be able to set me up like in the field, not only to help myself, but to help you. And like, otherwise I'm going to be too uncomfortable to go probably. But our baseline for whitewater kayakers, like what you need to go down a river, like part of the kit that everyone wears, it's just like our outfit. You know, we've got our spray deck that keeps the water out of the boat and keeps us in the boat. We've got a life jacket, which provides us flotation. We have a helmet for the rocks, and we have a throw bag. And the throw bag is the only piece of gear that, you know, you can wear them on your body, and some people do. I certainly used to for a window of time. That's what raft guides do. They, you know, clip one onto them. But the majority of time, our throw bags are attached into our boat, so that's the easiest thing for people to forget. And it depends on who you're with. Like, my friend yesterday forgot his throw bag, and I was just, yeah, dude, whatever, we got it. Sometimes people forget a throw bag, and maybe it's time to set a lesson in, and okay, you can't come because if you don't have a throw bag, you can't help me.
For the listeners that don't know what a throw bag is, can you explain that a little bit more? It's like
totally.
Basically a rope and a weighted bag, right, that you can toss to somebody?
Exactly, yeah. It's just an amount of rope, probably 30 meters, that gets stuffed into this bag, and you can hold on to the tail of the rope and throw the bag, and you throw it so that a swimmer who's come out of their boat or something else has happened, they can grab the rope and they can pendulum to shore, or you can pull them in, or if they're stuck in a feature, maybe you can pull them out, or sometimes you get the rope attached to your life vest, which has multiple attachment points, and we call that live bait, so then you can be attached to a rope and jump into the river. So safety, and these are all things that you could have, a group of 4 really experienced kayakers who go into the river with all this safety kit and never use it. That's perfect. Or you could have a group that, like, one person forgot their throw bag and 3 people didn't, and they go in and they might start to need things to deal with a situation. And whether that they have all the gear in the world or they forgot something, they might be over prepared and under equipped and crush it, or they might be underprepared and under-equipped, and a situation can go from totally manageable into critical and really dangerous. And yeah, all that said, that's why I like to paddle with certain people, where we try not to enter those situations.
Yeah.
But the other piece of gear is, we have paddles. So usually you like to have a 2-piece or a 4-piece paddle in the back of a kayak, so that if someone breaks a paddle or loses it, easy peasy, just snap a new one together and keep going. If you don't have one of those, it just sucks.
Yeah.
Like, people have to hike out.
It's like having a car with no spare tire, right? I mean, pretty much.
Yeah, and there's like really simple rock climbing gear that you can have on your person that can make a lot of things way more efficient and way safer. And it's a glaring weak point for me. And I'm just pretty open about it. I talk about it. I'm honest about it. Like, I know there's a lot of work I could do and should do to be more prepared. And it's something I think about and talk to people about. And we're trying to figure out fun ways to work on it together, and to, use climbing gyms as book them out to move boats around with ropes and move people around with ropes. And really, honestly, a great way is just having people share stories, and you can learn a lot from someone's experience too.
And I think part of it, like you hit the nail on the head, like part of it, having safety equipment, I think the biggest thing is actually knowing how to use it. I think anybody can go out and buy a trauma kit or whatever, right? But if you don't have the medical experience behind it, what good does it do, So I think that's a huge part of it. Going into a little bit more gear, like some of the footage, some of the film that you get, some of the stills, do you have a film crew that goes with you, or are you doing some of this on your own? How does that work?
Both. We kind of do it all, because like it's one of those, it's a benefit to us that our sport's small most of the time. Sometimes it's unfortunate because maybe the potential income isn't high, not that big a deal, because we don't really do it for the money, but it would be kind of cool if I had a sick, high-paying job.
Yeah.
And
I got
that would be awesome. But yeah, because everyone usually starts pretty young, and you start going to these places, and you're not good enough to be the main character of a project. But yeah, when I first bought I got a credit card, and because I needed a credit card to buy a plane ticket and a camera, so I got a job and I made a bunch of money, and I bought a credit card and was able to buy things. But I always had a camera to take photos, because one way you need to have photos of yourself to try to get into magazines and to be seen, and you could also take pictures of other people that you could then sell. So a lot of kayakers have cameras with them, and some people decide to do stills, some people decide to do movies and footage and film. And a lot of my friends have taken that, so now they're professional photographers or they're professional filmmakers. But yeah, I've always had cameras. GoPros made it nice for kayaking to get that POV footage, and kind of GoPro and Instagram paralleling at the same time. It was sweet that we could then create our own, or just, it's fun to have the footage anyway.
Until they crap out on you in the studio.
I know. Yeah, they're finicky. I usually try to have multiple go, and I lose a lot of them too. I've probably, I don't have no idea how many of them I've lost, but yeah, I just got another camera not too long ago, so I'm doing a lot of I'm getting a lot of footage, but I'm also doing a lot of photos. So it's fun to capture something, but it's part of the income as well. I sell photos, sell articles, and I typically have.
Well, you've made a couple magazine covers yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I've been kayaking for a really long time too, so so it's just part of it. And the version of pro kayaker that I always wanted to be wanted to get exposure. And back in the day, exposure didn't have anything to do with the internet. It was all in print, and film. So I've always been more interested in that as a goal. But yeah, we've all got GoPros, and we all pretty much have that, and just take turns
catching some of your footage and that sort of stuff. Some of the stuff I noticed is you guys going in some cold weather situations where it's like frigid temperatures, I would imagine. Are you guys doing that in a dry suit, or what does that entail? That's a whole nother level of kayaking. I would imagine.
Dry suit. That's another. That's kind of, I can kind of tie that into, like I was saying, I like to be comfortable, and I know how to make myself comfortable. So it's like my gear is important to me, and I don't necessarily like take care of it in, like, you wouldn't think I care about it the way I take care of it, but I take care of my comfort level, because that keeps me on the water longer if I need to be. It keeps me like more willing to take risks and progress. So majority of the year I'm in cold water. So I wear a dry suit, but under my dry suit I always have like nice knee-high merino socks, but I keep my long underwear layers usually quite thin, and then I really take care of my core. So I'll have a merino singlet, and then some sort of other layer that it can get wet it won't suck away my temperature. Like, it can get wet and stay warm. So merino or Capilene Air. And we got dry suits that they either need to be, take it, like, you just need a good dry suit that doesn't leak too bad. And then I always make sure I've got something on my head to keep heat in there. And with that, I can be pretty comfortable, pretty cold. Yesterday it was just about freezing. I had no idea. We got to the put-in, and I thought, oh my gosh, it is properly cold. And my friend looked in his truck and said, well, yeah, we're like at freezing. And I had actually brought lighter layers that day, but I knew we were going to be going fast, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I did put myself in a position that if anything happened, I'd lose my heat pretty quickly. But yeah, you just bring stuff to cover up your skin if you need to. Out here, we're only on the water for about an hour, so I don't cover up my hands.
That was one of my questions, is like, how long could you go, and how crazy, so.
Well, I always just bring something. So if I'll try to go as long as I can, because I don't like wearing a glove, because a glove puts this layer in between my hand and my paddle. So I just feel like I lose a lot from a glove or a mitt. But we have these things called pogies. So you attach them to the paddle, then your hand just goes in and you can hold your paddle, but you've got neoprene over your fist. And I just don't love them, so I don't use them all the time. But if it's going to be cold, I'll just make sure that I have the option. So then I get the chance to get uncomfortable, but safely. So I'll try to let my hands get as cold as possible, just to see what it's like, or to see if I can do it. Always knowing that if I want to end it, I can end it. Yeah.
We had one of our buddies in to record just the other day, and he's a backcountry fly fisherman, fishes in super cold weather year round, and he taught us a little trick with some latex gloves. He was like, just put on a latex glove, and it's amazing how warm your hands will stay just in like a 9mm latex or something, like a heavy duty mechanics. Yeah,
I used to work on the drilling rigs up in northern BC, northern Alberta, Quebec, and that was the best. It was like long into struggling with cold hands, working in the winter, that someone you can get these black latex gloves, they're called mechanics gloves, and it just changed everything.
Yeah, he's saying just put that under your regular glove, and then when you go to handle a fish too, like the fish have this membrane.
Takes like some bolts apart, or if you tie a fly, my gosh, it'd be impossible. Sometimes I can't undo my helmet, or can't like take a GoPro off or touch a GoPro button, because my hands are, all they can do is paddle. But yeah, that glove that's a good pro tip.
I guess one thing, to staying comfortable, is back when I was used to travel a lot, I did rock and roll touring for years with a bunch of different bands, and some of the bands were smart enough to figure out, like, let's just do the endless summer tour, right? We'll just stay south of the equator, this time of year, and north of it, and the good months. Do you get to travel quite a bit and have you traveled quite a bit? Besides going to Africa, have you been down to South America?
Yeah. I have traveled a lot. My first trip, I was 18 or 19, I think, when I went to Uganda. And quite a bit of time's passed since then. So, I've traveled a lot in Africa, multiple places, and a lot in South America, in multiple places. And then there's always been like a few maybe places I haven't like gone repeatedly, but I've been to Papua New Guinea for a kayaking trip, and to Pakistan for a kayaking trip.
Oh wow. How the hell do you travel with a kayak? Can you check it in with the airline, or do you have to ship it? Or?
Yeah, that's what I was doing this morning. I was calling around, and it's just expensive. I want to bring 2 kayaks over to the Zambezi, because I run clinics and kind of guide trips over there. So it's nice to bring some extra boats. And if I bring these 2 boats, because I have to recheck them in New York, it's going to be like $900 US for me to get 2 kayaks over. But it's possible. Like I brought 2 last year, and it cost me about that much. So
that's crazy.
You choose the right airline. You go look at their sporting baggage, and then you pay. Sometimes you don't have to pay, and sometimes they won't take a boat. So it's just a lot of things that can all happen.
That's crazy. What are you doing for cross training, strength and conditioning, that sort of thing outside the sport, if you're not always in the water?
Yeah, I tried to paddle a certain way so that it can be training sometimes. So sometimes I'll just paddle a river with a certain intention. So I'm going to have a higher heart rate, and or maybe I'll paddle extra long distances. And off water, I've done so many different things over the years, but last year I had a coach, and that was really fun and helpful. So, I'd have little training blocks set up from him, sometimes with just simple as bands, sometimes with kettlebells, sometimes he'd send me to a gym if I had access to one. And right now I bought a rowing machine, which I travel with.
Oh, really? A travel rower, huh? I didn't even know they made those.
It's the same that you would use in the gym. It's a Concept 2 rower, but I put it back in the box that it came in, and I drove it out to Ontario.
Okay,
and then drove it back to BC, and now
I thought you meant something that fit in your suitcase.
It's smaller than my smaller kayaks,
okay,
but it's all packed up. But I like having that because it's a water-based activity, but I'm using I get to use my legs, I'm using my hands at the same time. So instead of just kind of using your whole body to pull one blade through the water, I get to use my whole body to pull two blades hypothetically through the water. And as soon as I just need to make a bit more money, but I'll sign up with that coach again for a year. It was just kind of expensive for the amount of money that I make each year, but it was super worth it. And I have kettlebells, and it just depends on what sort of. Out here, I
love the kettlebell workouts, man.
They're awesome. Yeah, they're
so much fun. It's so different than anything I grew up doing. So like totally different.
Yeah, I love having weights because that is a strength that adds up really quickly, and I can feel it happen.
Well, and I know that you do a bunch of retreats and classes and that sort of thing, right? Like you help teach people a lot about what we talked about today when it comes to kayaking and just taking care of yourself. I know that you're big into yoga as well, right?
Yep. So I mentioned I worked on the rig, so I've had my back completely, like, I don't know what goes on. It just goes nuts, goes haywire. I've had that happen a few times, and I was thinking I'm way too young, and I'm spending all this time working on drilling rigs to make money to go kayaking, and it's damaging for the body. I didn't like that, so I started doing yoga completely in secret because I was just.
It's embarrassing. Gonna lie.
Yeah, unfortunately, I chose to be embarrassed by it instead of take an opportunity to be a bit more assertive and self-confident, and I was pretty shy about it. And
well, you're in some pretty vulnerable positions, a lot of it.
Yeah, but there's nothing. It's such a yoga's badass. Like you can get so strong doing it, and you can get so much mobility, and you can find so much challenge physically and mentally, and you can go down so many paths, and the breathing is so it took me forever to get the breathing, not by no means dialed, but intentional. And so about 2 years ago I took a yoga teacher training, and I like to pair that and offer that to my courses, and it just depends on the setting and what we're up to. Like sometimes we kind of get a bit celebratory, so doing yoga in the morning just seems like it's kind of tough to go to yoga in the morning because we just stayed up too late. And that's fine too, so it depends. Like when I have a really good setting for it, then I love that. I love showing people the yoga that I like to do, the yoga I do most, and the yoga that I think is helpful for kayaking, because kayaking is a pretty weird sport. You're sitting, and you do a lot of movement with your core. Like kayakers typically have really strong cores and maybe skinnier legs, but strong legs for sure. Do some long hikes, but they're and all that to me adds up to a lot of tension in my lower back and in my hips and my hip flexors. So yoga is really beneficial in that way for kayaking, and I mean for everything. But
awesome. So what classes do you have coming up next? Do you have anything coming up soon, or where can people find out about that? I don't know if you have a website, that sort of thing.
I do. My website is pretty simple, and it's bennyfuckingmarr.com, and I abbreviated it also. Yeah, it's Benny and then just FCKN.
Yeah.
Marr, because I was thinking, I don't know if I should write fucking, and then I wrote FCKN, and then I on the website it says that stands for free ride chef kayak natural, or maybe, I think I changed it recently so that I can hide behind that. And yeah, it's I'll have some people that I'll be guiding and coaching in Africa, and it's nice because now I'm getting people like for the third time or something, so that it's more of a coaching dynamic instead of a guiding and instructing dynamic. It feels like guiding and coaching because we know each other, and we get to work on pick up where we left off. And then after that, I'll be going to Chile, ideally.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and I'll be able to do something similar there. So it's pretty early. I mean, I've been doing it for a few years, but I'm still figuring out how to best do it for myself and for the people who are interested. And I really want to keep I do some online courses where I get to do like yoga classes and breathing classes, and I try to look at what I consume and how can I bring the things that I like to spend money on to how can I like provide a product that maybe kayakers who are like me would want to do. So I think about, websites and apps a lot as ways that I can offer cross training and fitness. And I think mainly I recognize that I need to hire people who are really good to do that, and hopefully create the platform so that it's not just me trying to figure out, and it has to be safe for people too. Like yoga's, you can hurt yourself doing anything, but I don't want to offer something that I'm not experienced enough to offer, or offer something that I really shouldn't be offering, because, most 9 times out of 10, there's going to be someone who would be a lot better at offering it. So that's what I'm working on. And I like doing the guiding and coaching. But I there's a lot of travel involved and burns a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, I like the online means that like any travel I do, it's just me traveling versus, but it's crazy to be responsible for like 10 international plane tickets.
Oh yeah.
For a 1 week trip.
Not to mention boats involved, right?
It's important that people travel, and it's important that people get to see amazing rivers and cool shit. But it's something I think about.
Yeah. Well, Ben, we're burning through the time here, man. I know that you have a date with the river later today, so we don't want to keep you too long. Just one more quick question before we hop off here. A couple more. We're super adamant on raising awareness to help preserve public lands, waterways. What are some things that you see most commonly that people could be doing better? I mean, garbage is always something that comes up, or litter, trash. But you're out in these beautiful spots pretty much on a daily basis, or a good portion of the year. What do you see that people could just be doing better in general?
I love forcing myself to pick up garbage, and oftentimes, just embarrassingly, that's a conversation I have to have with myself, where I'll identify garbage, walk past it, and I have to make myself go back and get it. And the more you make yourself go back and get it, the more likely you are to pick it up right when you see it.
That's a good point. I do the same thing.
That's helpful. And I don't feel very qualified to, I don't want to be hypocritical, because I do travel a lot, which has a big cost to the environment. I drive a lot. Like I'm putting 50,000 kilometers into my truck each year. I burn a lot of fuel. I use light switches. I charge cameras. I charge my computer. I don't always know where that power comes from. I've got phone. I don't just have a phone. I've got phones. Like I've burnt through phones. I had a phone sponsorship one time. I've got a ton of phones. So something else the things that I do is I try to be careful with water, which is hard to do. I am interested in there's cool products that you can get where, for example, a soap. Like if you get like a bottle of dish soap, it's like 80 or 90% water, but you can get a concentrate. And I I feel like I'm such a part of the problem that I'm not qualified to say anything. But just like I just try to think about it and keep the taps off, keep the
Yep.
lights off when you can, and I don't know, maybe a good thing to do is for someone to find a place close by to where they spend a lot of time, where they can get into nature and connect with a spot and really love it, because um, it's kind of the time to be aware.
Yeah, I think having that connection makes you appreciate it a little bit more and know what your purpose is, and whatever you think is important to preserve. I think that that's the only way that we're going to preserve it, is actually being in it and using it, because then I feel like you're better connected. That's just my personal
Yeah.
opinion, but
Yeah, and it's okay not to be. I'm okay with how I am. Like, I'm not perfect, and I might get super loud about some river that's getting dammed, but I could be totally part of another problem somewhere else.
right.
And it's okay to be wrong and to be right, and just keep trying to figure it out, for sure. Yeah. I don't live anywhere yet, you know what I mean? So I don't have a house carbon footprint, but I want to one day.
Yeah,
So it's just try to think about it
that's
and
cool
learn
though,
what
man.
people in your area do.
I really admire what you're doing. I think it's cool. I love seeing all your posts and everything that you got going on. So before we jump off here, let's tell people one more time where they can find you on social, your websites, anything that you got going on, anything that's coming up next for you.
Yeah, on Instagram it's just Benny MRR. My website is bennyfcknmar.com, and I sell calendars there around this time of year. So I sell a calendar with just photos from the year behind me, and that's been a really fun project to do. This is the third time I've done that, so that's up there. And otherwise, yeah, like I'm just going to be traveling and trying to get better at kayaking and trying to help other people get better at kayaking too,
Awesome,
for the
man.
most part.
Well, I do really appreciate your time. Thank you for being on, and thank you everybody for listening as I stumble here. But yeah, man, hit us up anytime. We'd love if you got anything going on, or you just want to come back on and shoot the shit with us. We're always down. So
Yeah, if I, for whatever reason, end up driving through Colorado, that would be sweet to sit down in
yeah,
person.
definitely hit us up. We won't have all these technical difficulties. We got a mini bar here. It's
Nice.
laid back and chilled. So
Oh, yeah.
all right, thanks, Ben. Appreciate you.
Yeah, cool, no worries.
Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com. We wanted to let you know that the Mountainside Podcast is now available on Patreon. If you'd like access to bonus footage, behind-the-scenes content, ad-free listening, and much more, simply find the link in our bio or visit patreon.com/themountainside. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Uncanna CBD. If you're looking to trust a natural solution, then look no further than Uncanna to help you curb anxiety, get better sleep, helping with long-term pain, joint mobility, muscle recovery, and many other benefits. Then you need to try a full spectrum or broad spectrum CBD. And the only brand that I trust is Uncanna. I use their products daily, and I can attest to you of how well it works. Uncanna is also veteran owned and operated, and is just an incredible company that lives in the outdoors. Whether they're sponsoring professional rock climbers, dirt bikers, skiers, and many other athletes, helping veteran communities get outside, this is an incredible company with an incredible product. Because they are a sponsor here at the Mountainside Podcast, and you're listening to this ad right now, you can receive 10% off your entire order every time that you visit uncanna.com. All you have to do is simply enter promo code TMS at checkout to receive 10% off your entire CBD order, apparel, canine products, or whatever Uncanna has to offer just by simply typing in the code TMS at checkout. Once again, that's promo code TMS at uncanna.com. We are also brought to you by the #1 online outfitter for outdoor sports. I'm talking about Backcountry and the incredible brands that they carry like North Face, Patagonia, Garmin, Yeti, and the list truly goes on and on. You can find just about anything that you need for camping, hiking, biking, climbing, running, kayaking, all your snow sports, and much, much more. Backcountry's got you covered when you want to get outside and enjoy yourself on or in some incredible gear. Because Backcountry is a sponsor of the Mountainside Podcast, you can get an exclusive link that'll give you backdoor pricing. I'm talking 60 to 70% off on select items and discounted pricing site-wide. All you have to do is visit themountainsidepodcast.com, click on the affiliates page, and look for the Backcountry logo, or simply open the show notes wherever you're listening to the podcast right now and look for the Backcountry link. We are also brought to you by Onnit. Onnit is an amazing company based right here in the USA, helping humans reach peak performance mentally and physically. This is not just another supplement company with the same old, same old. Onnit's diverse lineup of products and supplements are backed by science and research, and that's what truly makes this company so amazing. Onnit offers supplements to help sports performance, energy levels, your mood, sleep, brain function, focus, immune system, digestive health, and that's not all. Onnit also has amazing fitness programs, equipment, apparel, and you can now save 10% on all of it. Just visit onnit.com, that's ONNIT.com, and use the promo code TMS at checkout to receive 10% off your entire order.